Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Jessie, and welcome back to another episode of Rewired to Inspire. This show where we'll dive into self-love, learn tangible ways to rewire the brain, and discovering your soul's purpose. The goal of Rewired to Inspire is to encourage listeners to begin doing the hard work, to get curious and open to maximizing your life. Our mindset shapes how we live. Depending on life events, traumas, and personal experiences, our mindsets are all vastly different. However, one thing we all have in common is the ability to rewire our mind, to change the narrative, and to pivot our lives. I hope you leave each episode with the belief that you are so worthy to live a life true to you. I look forward to chatting with you every single Tuesday and Thursday and helping you grow exponentially in all areas of your life. Without further ado, here's today's episode. Hello, you guys, and welcome back to my podcast. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am thrilled to be hopping on the mic for episode number 54. Number 54 of Rewired to Inspire, and we are digging into some deep content today. We are digging into some content that applies to every single person on the face of the earth. And I know that my content can sometimes align with certain folks for a different reason. It can resonate for a different reason. But my goal for this week's episodes was to dive into things that could be in alignment for everyone on the face of the earth. And so for this week and for today's episode, we are going to be focusing on ways that we can improve our health and ways we can improve our well-being in our life and ways that we can just better our health outside of food and exercise. And so number 54 is going to be all about things outside of food and exercise that are negatively affecting your health. And these are things that we all know on some subconscious level, and we all realize that these things are affecting our health. However, sometimes we forget how much they can affect our health, and sometimes we forget how much they're playing into our day-to-day life because we are so wired and focused on just paying attention to the things that we eat and the ways that we move our body that we forget all the other things that can really be detrimental to our physical health long-term as well as in the present moment. So without further ado, let's dive into 6 things affecting your health outside of food and exercise. Okay, so today's episode surfaced for me because I've really been trying to hone in lately on making sure I get to the gym every day, making sure I'm eating as well and balanced of a diet as possible, making sure that I'm hydrating myself, making sure that I'm filling myself with just nurturing good things. But I was realizing that a lot of my aspects of my life are still off the rails and a lot of my hormones are still unbalanced and my sleep is still off. And there was just a lot of things that were really out of whack for me. And so it made me realize that if I'm experiencing this, I definitely am not the only one that is feeling this way and that is dealing with this. And so it caused me to sit down one day and really write down all the things that I think might be negatively affecting my health. And I want you to even just right now in this moment ask yourself, when you think about health, what are the things that stick out for you? It's typically the foods that we eat, right? As well as our exercise. But there's so many other aspects that really narrow down to the root cause of what our health is and the things that affect our health. And I've really begun to see this firsthand, not only with my work as a social worker, but also in my journey with Young Living, of realizing the effects of toxins, realizing the effects of things in our everyday life that we don't realize are affecting us. And so as I've been beginning to hone in on my own personal health and on my own personal experiences, I'm realizing that there's such a big gap between what society teaches us and what social media teaches us compared to what is actually factual and what is happening. And we are going to get into some statistics today that are honestly quite scary. And honestly quite scary when you realize and you hear these things, but it's also my aim that not to scare you, but to inspire you to begin to make those shifts in your life. My whole mission with this podcast and with my Young Living journey is to teach folks to begin to be proactive in our health instead of reactive. We live in a world that is so reactive and we rely so much on Western medicine and on the pharmaceutical world to come in and fix us once we've done the damage. But what if we can begin to be more proactively in our day-to-day life? What if we can begin to incorporate little things into our day-to-day life that are going to improve our health? What if a lot of the things that are negatively affecting us come from the stories that we tell ourselves and come from our brain, right? What if our friendships and our relationships and our work are affecting us on a more detrimental level than we might even realize sometimes? And so today's episode is one that really just inspired me to sit down and also reflect on my own life, because if I'm preaching this to you guys, I also need to apply it to my life. And I want to begin to share my own experiences of how this is affecting me so that I can hopefully help, again, as always, even one person begin to shift this into their life. And so the first thing that really came up for me when brainstorming the things that affect us outside of food and exercise is talking negatively to yourself about yourself, or talking negatively to other people, so gossiping. And so I had really begun to hear this for the first time when I was listening to Jay Shetty's podcast On Purpose. And I don't remember which episode it was or really the context of what he was talking about. Or no, sorry, what I was listening to was Think Like a Monk. It was his book, Jay Shetty's book. And he was sharing about how detrimental gossiping is, and how one of the first things they learn when they become a monk is to end talking negatively to self and about other people, because it lowers your vibe so much and it affects your health on such a negatively deeper aspect than we can even begin to realize. And he just begins to explain how practicing gratitude on a day-to-day basis allows your mind to heal and allows your body to heal, because the thing is our body associates negativity with stress. And when our body feels stress, it has to do something with it. It has to store it somewhere, because stress in and of itself is an energy. And when we feel stressed and that's happening, our body is producing so much more cortisol, our heart is beating faster, our autopilot state turns on, our logical thinking goes offline, we're hypersensitive, we're quick to react, and overall, you can just see how much energy there is when we're stressed and when we're negative. And if you think about even when you're gossiping, there's a difference between getting things off your chest in venting and releasing, and there's a difference between that and gossiping. And we're all guilty of gossiping. We're all guilty of saying things and talking about people and situations and whatever it is. But what if that's affecting your health more than you even realize? What if gossiping is hurting your long-term health more than you even realize? And when I first heard that in Jay Shetty's book, Think Like a Monk, it just made me reflect, because it made me realize how guilty I am of doing that, and how guilty I am of doing that when I get with certain people, because we've shaped our relationships around that. Think of those people in your life that it's almost like the norm that when you get around them, you just begin to vent and you begin to just express things. And think about how much that leaves your nervous system feeling depleted at the end of that, even again, if you don't realize. And that's why often we feel exhausted after we hang around certain people. We feel exhausted after certain events because our body, in speaking and talking negatively, aren't in alignment at all. And so I want to switch the page here for a second about negative talking to yourself. Gossiping is one thing in and of itself that we can begin to control with other folks. But even deeper than that, the negative self-talk that you have with yourself on an everyday basis. Because that inner voice that we have in our mind that tells us to do things, not to do things, what to say, what not to say, our thoughts we have, our perception of things, whatever, it's really helpful. Our inner voice is helpful. That's our conscience. That's our higher self. But when it's always negative, it's really not helpful. And negative thinking can really begin to decrease our motivation. It can begin to heighten feelings of helplessness. Because when we begin to negatively self-talk, we begin to think of the worst case scenario. We begin to think of all the bad things that can go wrong, all the ways that we can fail, all the things that are going to go wrong, all the things in our life that we've done wrong, all the mistakes that we've made, all those terrible people that we've been with, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? We can just really begin to see, even me talking about it, it's just exhausting. And although, yes, in the moment it feels good, but my message and my goal for this episode is for you to begin to see how this is affecting your health long term more than you might realize that it is outside of the moment that it's actually happening. And negative self-talk and talking negatively is linked to depression. It's linked to increased levels of anxiety. It's lead to hyper focusing on the negative. Because again, if we think of a blue Jeep and we have that in our mind, next time you go out, I promise you, you're going to notice all the blue Jeeps. And that's the same thing with our mind. If we're telling our mind all these negative things and we're so hyper focused on all the negative things, our mind's going to begin to see that in return. Because as I've expressed before, our mind literally does not know the difference between what we tell ourselves and what is reality. It does not know the difference. And so if we're constantly telling ourselves that our life sucks and we're not happy and we don't have fulfillment and we don't have this and we don't have that and we lack that and we're comparing ourselves and we're gossiping and we're doing all these things, our mind is going to shape our identity around that. Our mind is going to shape our world around that. And guess what? In saying that, our mind is going to then begin to see all those things, therefore making a reality, therefore proving it to ourselves. And so that's when we can really begin to get into deeper levels of catastrophizing, because we start to associate one negative thing with the next, and we have that domino effect. And this can be really, really contagious and hard to break, but it is so possible. And I want you guys to realize how much that's affecting your health, because again, we might not realize that negative self-talk is toxic, and we might not realize that gossiping is toxic. But I want you to ask yourself, when's the last time that you had a negative thought and you felt better? When's the last time you had a negative belief about something and you proved yourself right and you felt better? And we can begin to get comfortable in that feeling because we prove ourselves right, and that's something wholly differently in and of itself. But when's the last time you felt good after you did that? Or you felt on cloud 9 after you gossiped or said something negative? That right there is proof that your mind is not supposed to go there. Our hearts are not supposed to go there for long periods of time. And again, everything I mentioned ebbs and flows and it comes in waves. And yes, we're human and we need to process things. And it's our normal human instinctual instinct to do that. But our mind begins to get trained to get stuck in negativity. That is the catch of this. Negativity becomes permanent until we rewire ourselves to shift those thinking. And so it's so important that we begin to catch ourselves being negative and to change it. Noticing if you're telling yourselves the buts or the whatever, or yeah, this happened, but, or yeah, I could do that, however, that might happen, or whatever that looks like. Begin to see the good in things. Find the gratitude in things. You'll begin to quickly see how the universe and how your life will begin to shift. But if we're thinking of the negative, all we will continue to attract is the negative. So I want you to remember, negatively talking to yourself and to others lowers your vibe. It lowers your vibration as a person, which is our whole vibration of being. It's how we operate. It's the frequency in which we send out and the frequency in which comes to return. And so if we are operating out of a negative headspace and a negative vibe, we are going to begin to attract all negative things and all things at that same level of frequency. And so therefore, again, proving to ourselves that we are worthy of that and that's all we're worthy of. But if we're able to snap out of that and to rewire that, the good will begin to come in. And I'm allowed to say this because I've been on a very opposite spectrum. I used to be vastly negative. I used to think that everything bad in life was just happening to me and that I just deserved it and my life sucks and I'm just meant to be with bad partners and I'm just meant to have friends that don't support me and I'm just meant to have jobs I don't love and I'm meant for crappy things to happen or whatever it is. And so I was proving to myself for so long that I was deserving of that. And I've shared this before, how that shifted for me is one day I asked my friend, how are you so positive? Like, how are you so confident? And the thing is for me at that time, it was almost annoying how positive she was. And that's because our frequencies were so different and that my frequency was literally being disrupted by hers. And she said, I tell myself kind things every day in the mirror. I tell myself kind things on a day-to-day basis. I catch the things that I'm telling myself and I try to switch it. And of course, when I first heard this, I had shame up, my walls up, guilt. I wasn't ready to hear it. But as I slowly sat with that and I began day in and day out to slowly implement little things, I was able to change those thoughts, change the narrative for my life. And yes, I still get negative thoughts and I still get down and I still gossip sometimes and I still do those things, and I'm slowly learning to lessen that more and more and more. And I'm noticing every single day, the more that I lessen that and the less that I spend my time and my frequency in that area, so much more time that I have to see the good in life. And it's just such a more positive, uplifting side to be on the lighter end of things than to always be in that dark headspace. I lived there for so long, and so I just want you to know that if that's you, I relate to you so deeply because I know what that's like. But I also know that we're not meant to live our lives in those headspaces. And I know that trauma can happen and life experiences can happen, as I always say, that can cause us to become stuck in that. But the thing is our mindset and our brain and our body does not begin to shift until we do. And so that might take going to therapy and getting extra support. That might take every single day when you wake up trying to tell yourself something kind. And for me, what was really helpful is putting in my headphones and listening to positive affirmations. Because again, as I mentioned, our mind doesn't know the difference between what we tell ourselves and what is reality. And so if we are subconsciously rewiring our brain through listening to positive affirmations, our mind doesn't know that that is not true. And it will begin to lay down new neural pathways, as I mentioned in my last episode, talking about how we're able to switch our mind through neuroplasticity. This is exactly an example of that, of how our mind is always able to expand and grow, but we just have to be willing to. And so that is my first point of things that are affecting our health, and that is a huge one. Negative self-talk and negative self-belief and gossiping is so much more detrimental to your health than food or exercise. The second thing that is negatively affecting your health is suppressing your emotions. Suppressing those feelings that come up when they come up. Suppressing those gut feelings that you have, those anxieties that you have, those heart palpitations that you have, those feelings that creep up on you at the randomest times when we get triggered and we don't know why we're triggered. Those times when we feel certain emotions and we just want to run away from them and push them down. That is negatively affecting your health and your life and your vibe so much more than you realize, my friend. Because the thing about suppressing our emotions is it's just going to become stronger, stronger, and stronger. And for a minute, I want you to imagine that you're going out on a hike. And I want you to imagine that you're carrying a heavy backpack on your back and you're about to embark on this big mountain. And that backpack that you're carrying on your back, that is your trauma. That is your emotions. That is your experiences. That is your feelings. That is those things weighing you down. And as you begin this journey and this hike of life, and as you begin to climb that mountain, it begins to get heavier. And as you get closer to the peak and it's more steep, it's going to get heavier and heavier and heavier. And you have two choices. One is to keep going and to get over that mountain and to come back down it. And after that hump, there will be slower and more little bumps along the way. But we typically have one big mountain to get over. Or the second option is you can go back down the mountain. And that would be suppressing your emotions, which we do so much. And once you do that, imagine you're hiking up this mountain, you decide to turn back around. And then you try again, those emotions come up. Guess what? They just get heavier. And then you fall back down, you try again, and they get heavier. And then they fall back down, and then they get heavier. Our emotions are no different. Our emotions, feeling that way, is your body's way of communicating with you that something is wrong. Something needs to be processed. And the way that I used to explain our memories and our emotions to my clients is that I want you to imagine, remember when we used to have DVDs? And I get not everybody will be able to resonate with this, and I'm kind of still on the cusp end of this, but I definitely had DVDs and VHSs in my childhood. But remember when you used to play a DVD and it had a small scratch on it, and the disc would skip and skip and skip and skip until it got past that part into another part? Our core memories are no different. And those scratches on the DVD are much like our traumas. And our mind, the reason that it skips on it is because it wasn't able to process it. And it's not able to process it because if something's too overwhelming, our mind simply pulls the plug. It disconnects us. It turns our logical part offline. And that is typically when our emotions become suppressed because our mind wasn't actually able to process it and store it properly. So what it does is it plays it over and over again, by which way sending you anxiety, sending you feelings of depression, sending you feelings of overwhelm, sending you those butterflies, sending you into that fight or flight, sending you into that reactive, that anger, that sadness, frustration, whatever it is. And so when we begin to suppress and suppress and suppress, that energy has nowhere to go but to explode and to come out of us. And when we do that, we are putting more stress on our body. And when we have more stress, again, we have more cortisol. Our body's working harder. Our nervous system is in overdrive, right? And we begin to just hyper live our life in that area, which leads to, again, a lot of physical stress on the body, causing yourself to live that pain more than once. Because when we suppress our emotions and we ignore them, they're going to come up again, meaning that we have to live through it again. But if we're able to become okay with feeling our emotions in a safe way, and again, this is why I'm so passionate about going to therapy, because it's a safe place to unpack your emotions, to unpack your traumas, to unpack the suppressed emotions that you've been pushing down for so long. And there's so much stigma around talking and going to therapy, and we need to normalize the psychology and the reasoning behind getting our emotions out of our body. There's so much trauma trapped in our bodies, and the thing is if we don't do the work to heal that, we will not only live with that for our whole life and negatively affect our health, but we are passing that on to our kids and to our grandkids and to our great-grandchildren and to the people around us, by which way of us living in a survival state. And so suppressing your emotions is affecting your health on such a deeper level than we can even begin to realize. And that's one that I was so passionate, and I knew I had to share with you all, just to give that permission that it's okay if you're suppressing your feelings, because I know that it can be hard to deal with them. I know the reasons of why we suppress our emotions. We do it to protect ourselves so that we don't feel the pain or the sadness associated with certain events in our life. But whenever we do that, we're causing ourselves to have to live through it over and over again. And the thing about feeling our emotions is that we're never going to forget the things that we've gone through or the feelings that we've had, but our mind, again, is just able to store it. It's able to make it less and less apparent in our life. It's able to turn the dial from a 10 to a 5 in intensity, to just lower the severity of how we feel it. And I just want to, again, let you know that you're so deserving to just have that moment for a minute, to just release things that happened to you in childhood, release things that have happened to you in your life, so that you don't have to live in that every single day. And we might not even realize that we're living in it every single day, because it's happening subconsciously. And so if you're able to bring awareness to the areas of your life in which you might be suppressing your emotions and begin to do the work, I guarantee you're going to thank you, and your mind and your body is going to thank you very, very much. Number 3, the third thing that is affecting your health more, maybe not more, but at an equal level of food and exercise. And again, all these things kind of go together, and they all jumble together that affect our health. No one of them is more or less than the other, but in retrospect, how all of them together simultaneously are negatively affecting our health. And so my third point is one that we are also guilty of, extremely guilty of, and that is the go, go, go mentality. Living our life on autopilot, living in that state of going from one thing to the next, without pausing for a second. Not allowing yourself time to enjoy life. And this is often caused, I will say from my last point, of suppressing your emotions. Because whenever we're go, 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 we don't have time to process our thoughts, and therefore we don't have to feel our emotions. And a lot of us like to mask our emotions at the end of the day by either go, go, go until it's time to go to sleep, or we like to go, go, go and then come home and drink or use substances or whatever it is so we don't feel our emotions. And so therefore, again, energy and trauma and negativity is being trapped in our body. And when we go, 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 and we do that, that leads to such severe levels of burnout and of chronic stress. And when our body is in overdrive, it has to work so much harder to just keep our well-being at a state of homeostasis. Because if we are constantly in that go, go, go mentality, not only are we not allowing our body time to rest and digest and just come back to its resting state, but we're really also beginning to hurt our mind and our level of self-love and our fulfillment in life. Because we're not here to just get up and go to work and come home and pick up the kids and make dinner and go to activities and come home and rush for bedtime and go to bed and go to sleep. We're meant to find gratitude in everyday life. How many days this week can you wake up and say that if that was your last day, you would be glad of the way that you lived it? I know that I'm not. I know that this is the one, if any of them, I am the most guilty of. My calendar is booked from the time I wake up to the time I go to sleep. And yes, that is largely prefaced around me just knowing that I need to do certain things in order to get to the future that I want and to the person that I aspire to be. But that also means that I schedule in time to have fun, time to find self-love, time to pour into myself. But I do find myself pushing that aside because other things come up. But I'm beginning to see this week more than any other time in my life how much that's catching up with me. I'm noticing that my allergies are worse. I'm noticing my digestion is worse than usual. My throat's been hurting. I'm a little more nasally. You can hear it on my last couple of podcast episodes. I'm extra tired even though I'm sleeping 8 hours a night. I'm more resentful towards my partner and towards people around me. And that's only because of my own actions, and only I have the ability to change that. And again, this is where that swing of pendulum comes in, where we can become too focused on resting that we forget about working hard and doing the things. And we can also become so focused on doing the things and working that we forget to take time off. And so it's constantly about balancing yourself out and finding that harmony. Taking 30 minutes a day to an hour a day to pour into yourself. Finding time to slow down and to meditate. And again, meditating was a thing that Jay Shetty talks about in his book, Think Like a Monk. And if you haven't already picked that up, that is a book that I recommend more than any books that I've read in my life, honestly, as far as just calming our mind down and realizing the importance of slowing down and on just the outside stressors in our life and how impactful negatively they are on our life. But it just made me realize in retrospect how important mindfulness and meditation is. Because it allows our body to come back to a calm breath, to come back to breathing at a normal level. So many of us do deep breathing but also with like a fast, anxious approach to it. And we're just so go, 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 and our hearts are beating so fast, and we just have so much adrenaline pumping in us and energy and just all these things, yet we feel so tired and we feel so resentful and we feel so just feeling like we don't have fulfillment in our life and feeling unhappy and no joy and all these things. And that's likely coming and stemming from the fact that we're just trying to go, 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 go from one thing to the next. So slow down. Don't forget what life is all about while also going for your hopes and dreams. Don't forget that it's important and valid and you're okay and you're allowed to take time and pause and take time for yourself. And so that go, go, go autopilot mentality is my third point on things that are negatively affecting your health. Number 4, this is one that really honestly kickstarted my podcast of how this all started for me, and that's toxins. Toxins and chemicals in our products, in the things we use every day, in our food, in the air, in the environment, on our clothes, honestly in everything. And I will just say that again, with each of these points, it's about finding ways to just find 1% improvements. Little ways that we can begin to improve these things in our life. And toxins is a huge one that is most definitely not taught to us. It's definitely not taught to us in school. It's not taught to us in university. We really have to go out and be willing to learn these things. And Young Living just happened to fall into my life 2 years ago. And without that journey, I wouldn't have ever realized the negative impact that all the products in my life were having on my health. When I first was introduced to Young Living, I was dealing with severe hormonal issues, severe digestive issues. IBS, was having so much trouble with stones in my stomach and with ovarian cysts and period pain and headaches and migraines and just all the things that we think are quote unquote normal. In fact, in school, we're taught that as a woman, that is just normal. And men are just supposed to feel a certain way and whatever. But the thing is we don't realize the negative correlation that our toxic products have on our life. And on average, women are exposed to 168 chemicals a day. And we might just think, oh, it's just a little bit of perfume. It's just a little bit of a candle. It's just a little bit of deodorant. It's just a little foundation, just a little body wash, just a little this, just a little that. But we don't realize that that's all compounding over time. And this is something we like to refer to as the cocktail effect, which basically means if you take an empty glass and you pour a little bit of water in it, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, eventually that glass will fill. And eventually that glass will overflow. And the thing about our bodies is we're all different sized glasses and we all have different amounts of water going in us. And so we never really know when our cup is going to overflow. We never really know when we're going to feel those effects. And so whenever I'm giving classes on essential oils and I'm educating folks about the benefits of ditching toxins and switching to natural products, I always like to preface that just because you've been okay, quote unquote, using those products for this amount of time doesn't mean that that's not affecting you more than you think. Because using toxins and toxin overloads can cause us to feel the same emotions and the same feelings that are normalized and glorified in our society. Having painful periods, having trouble sleeping, having low libido, having trouble digesting food, having endometriosis, having trouble with fertility, having just chronic migraines, chronic stress, all these things that we don't realize are impacting our life. And the thing about toxins is that they're in all of our products. And so if you're ever curious to learn more on that, I definitely encourage you to send me a message and I would love to do a class for you or to educate you on just some ways that you can switch. But finding a company that is actually pure in their products. And Young Living is the only company that I have found that I trust so far with my products because I know that they are clean from the time that they're sourced as the plant to the time that they're delivered to my house. And that is a topic in and of itself, but that is my fourth point of things that are affecting our health more than we realize is the toxins and the chemicals that are in our products that we're using on a day-to-day basis. I promise you, my friend, whoever is listening to this, they are affecting you whether you want to believe it or not. And it's about getting to the baseline of it. This isn't some hippy-dippy thing about oils and plant-based healing or whatever. I mean, in some ways it probably is because that's definitely an alignment for me. But I share this because it's true and because I care and because I want to re-normalize for our next generation how much those things are affecting our health more than we realize that they are. And my fifth point on something that's affecting your health and your life and your mental health more than you might think. And this is something that I've talked about before on my podcast, but that's letting yourself down. Letting yourself down in different areas of your life. So what I mean by that is telling yourself you're going to do something and then not doing it. Telling yourself a story and then not following through. For example, I'm going to go to the gym when I go home. And then you don't go. I'm going to record a podcast tonight. And then I don't do it. I'm going to eat healthy tonight. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm just going to order pizza. It's that shoulda, coulda, woulda mentality. And we don't realize how much this is affecting our health because we're just like, meh, I'll do it tomorrow. But the thing is every time that we tell ourselves we're going to do something and we don't do it, think about what that's doing to our mind. That's breaking a huge sense of trust and a sense of reliability within ourselves. And so I've said this before, but imagine you have a friend that just always tells you they're going to do something or they're going to be there or whatever, and then they don't do it. And they just let you down over and over again. Eventually you would get sick and tired of that friend and begin to cause some resentment and lack of trust. But the thing is we're doing that with ourselves every single day. And when we have no sense of trust with ourselves, how can we begin to trust others and those around us? How can we begin to hold ourselves accountable if we let ourselves down all the time? And so I've mentioned before the book Atomic Habits on my podcast, and Atomic Habits is basically, well, there's so many things, but basically how Our everyday habits are formed in the backbone of how habits are begin to be stored. But a huge thing that's helpful for me with not letting myself down is to create new habits. And so if that is to go to the gym when I don't want to make that promise to myself, creating a new habit that every single day after a certain action, I will do that at the same time. Creating necessity to make sure that you're not letting yourself down. And so that for me could mean packing gym clothes in my truck so that when I get off work, I already have them with me. I have no excuses not to go home. That could mean placing an online grocery order to get healthy food to make sure you're eating healthy. Right? That could mean booking things in your calendar and setting a bunch of reminders so that you don't miss it. That could mean putting money in a jar every time you miss something so eventually the pain outweighs the pain of doing the action. I don't think we realize sometimes how much letting ourselves down is affecting our self-worth. And this is one that is so easily fixable. It takes effort and it takes conscious awareness of how much it's affecting us, but it is definitely one that is so attainably able to be switched. I almost said the word easy there, and it's not easy. It's not easy to begin to hold ourselves accountable, but I want you to always ask yourself, is this action going to make me feel better if I do it or if I don't? Am I going to regret doing this or am I going to regret not doing this? The gym is a great example of that. When have you ever gone to the gym and said, I wish I didn't go to the gym? Quite literally never. There's not a time that I've jumped on the microphone, even if it was the worst thing I've ever recorded and I don't even publish it, there's never been a time that I've jumped on here and I've regretted doing it. Because when we do those hard things and we have self-discipline and we do the things even when we don't want to do them, they're that much more fulfilling and it's so much more rewarding to then take time to rest, to then take time to do the fun things. But we're so used to letting ourselves off the hook that it just becomes a norm and a habit to let ourselves off the hook. So it's about rechanging those habits, rechanging the narrative for yourself and holding yourself accountable. Because if you can't hold yourself accountable, how do you expect other people to hold themselves accountable and to make promises to you and vice versa? And so begin to have more self-discipline, keeping the promises you make with yourself, and I promise you, you will begin to see an increase in your self-love and your self-worth because you'll begin to thank yourself for doing the hard things. My sixth and final thing that is affecting your health more than you realize outside of food and exercise is that you're not pouring into your own cup. How many of us can raise our hands right now and just agree that you are not taking enough time to pour into your own cup? We feel like we're doing 101 things in the run of the day, yet we still feel exhausted and unfulfilled. And that's because you're not taking time to do the things that you love, to do the things that bring you joy. And again, this does pour into that go, go, go mentality of slowing down and taking time for yourself. But we all need to remember that it's not selfish to pour into your cup. We all know that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's so, so true. Right? We have to begin to normalize pouring into our own cup, taking time for ourselves, doing the things that we love, doing the things that bring joy, doing the things that bring fulfillment, because without that, we are going to be very unfulfilled people. At the end of the day, and as I've said many times on my podcast, all we're promised at the end of the day is us. And if we forget to tend to us, what else do we have? If we're not able to know the things that bring us joy and practice them often, we're really not taking the time to get to know ourselves and to find gratitude for all the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. And one thing that I always like to tell myself is my internal body is doing everything that it can to protect me, everything that it can to keep my heart beating, my blood flowing, my lungs pumping, to digest my food, to process everything, to just keep my body floating, keep my bones strong, keep my muscles strong, right? My body and your body is doing everything that it can to keep you safe and to keep you going. And so what can you begin to do on the outside in your physical world to thank your body? That is taking time for yourself. Again, not getting too comfortable with this, but taking time every day to slow down and to pour to yourself. to validate and to tend to yourself on a mental aspect, to do the things you love and that bring you joy and to raise your vibe, right? Taking time each and every day to do something you love, making it a daily habit, 30 minutes a day of filling your cup, 30 minutes a day of doing something that you love, getting to know yourself from your own unique perspective, right? And so that is my 6th point. Not filling your cup and not taking enough time to rest and to find joy and to find fulfillment is not only going to negatively affect your health, but it's also negatively just going to affect you as a person and your state of well-being in the world. Because we are not meant to just do things that don't bring us joy just to get a paycheck or just to tend to everybody else. We can't forget about ourselves. And if you're surrounded by people that tell you that it's selfish to do so, or don't give you the opportunity or the time or the permission to pour into your own cup, I definitely encourage you to begin to look at those relationships and ask yourself if they are in alignment. And so, in conclusion, to wrap up today's episode, I just want to highlight that, yes, food and exercise are extremely important, right? We know that. We know that nutrition and taking care of ourselves is a huge part of our well-being. But without these 6 things not being met and fixed and fulfilled, they really serve no purpose. Eating good and exercising really does us no good if on a mental aspect, we are not good. And all of these things, the reason that they're not good for us is because they lead to such heightened levels of chronic stress. Stress is good in little micro aspects, but all these things lead to us often having macro levels of stress. 5 million people a year die because of diseases and depression and anxiety and mental health issues leading to stress. 5 million people and rising. Stress is 1 out of 5 of the leading causes of death in our world. And I know that that comes from suppressing our emotions, for not taking time for joy, for having trauma stuck in our body, right? For negatively self-talking, for letting ourselves down. And we might just think that those things are woo-woo and that they don't matter. But I promise you, my friends, psychologically, scientifically proven, they matter. The stats share it. I have personal experience that can prove that. And so my goal of today's episode is for you to begin to ask yourself some ways that you can improve those areas of your life, to begin to lower your stress, to slow down while also still striving for your goals, still going for the things that you want to accomplish, but also not forgetting what life is about and learning that it's okay, needed, and crucial to slow down and take time for yourself. I want to just send some love, let you know I'm so proud of you. Thank you, as always, for tuning into today's episode. I truly hope you guys enjoy. I hope that you find some time even after today to just schedule for the next week 30 minutes a day to pour into your cup. Maybe 5 minutes to tell yourself something nice every day. Practice this with your kids, practice this with your partner, practice this with your family. Make it a fun, radiating experience that we can begin to pass on to other folks. It starts with us, and from there we can pour into those around us. Thank you guys so much as always. I look forward to chatting with you next episode. Bye, you guys. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's episode of Rewire to Inspire. I absolutely love connecting with you all, so make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am at JessieBrown13. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to leave a review or share with someone you think would enjoy. I look forward to chatting with you all next episode. And remember, get out of your head and into your heart.